Hey, it's Curly. You know what I think is really stupid? The fact that Inlet Pulse for some reason is still 20 something dollars after being reprinted once. Brainwash Swirler is finally doing decent after being reprinted a second time, but Yuika, after just being reprinted a second time very recently, is starting to near $30 again. My problem with these cards is that a lot of players see them as staples that you can run in every deck and that maybe should be in every deck, when in actuality, that's very rarely the actual case. Let's take a look. Hear me out for a second. We're gonna go ahead and just take a look at all of Sorta here and just legitimately take a look at if a deck actually needs Inlet Pulse, if it's kind of a valid option, or if it just straight up does not need Inlet Pulse. Because the argument here is that, oh, you're so much better competitively, your deck is so much more competitive, so much more competitively viable if you have this expensive card that is a must-have in every deck. But is that actually the case? Does it actually make that much of a difference? We even have some of the new cards here from Divine Set 1. Right off the top, we're going to just go ahead and throw those in. Does not need Inlet Pulse, because of the fact that while this can do 5 attacks, so Inlet Pulse can actually come up, this is very xenophobic. It needs its Veleno names, so that's not going to be worth it. Cristianos here technically can do 4 attacks, 5 attacks somehow, but it's really only able to do that on turn 4. Inlet Pulse is really not going to help this on turn 3 or any point after turn 3. Flagberg literally actually needs Inlet Pulse because it actually has Flagberg written on the text of the card. Magnolia Elder is a weird one because this is the one that sort of started this whole thing where it's like, oh, Inlet Pulse must be in every Sorta deck that can run it because of the fact that that one time the cat was really good with the dragon. It's not really the case. They have their own version of Inlet Pulse in the Godot, whereas now Inlet Pulse is like fine. It doesn't really accelerate the game plan for Magnolia, and I think a lot of people are locked on this ancient mentality that this whole thing of riding into Elder, giving you an Inlet Pulse is really good, when in actuality you have to stray away from that, and instead of trying to farm up on a Magnolia Elder, you kind of have to close out your game on Magnolia Elder just because of the way that the current landscape of the game is. So we're just going to throw this into valid inclusion. This guy, Fake Flagberg, he's gonna go here as well, just because he does a thing with Tear Dragons, which is actually relating to Flagberg, so we'll put that in there. Then we have ourselves Grand Fia. Grand Fia, I'm gonna say no. He doesn't really need it. He has enough to work with. Honestly, I don't think Inlet Pulse adds anything to that deck. Then we got Zorga. Zorga, technically now, thanks to the Zorga mask, can technically use Inlet Pulse, because it can actually do 4 attacks. But that would be stupid as hell, so we're not going to play that in Zorga. Then we have ourselves Leonorn Mask, as well as Leonorn Vivian, and then all the Leonorns in the Rainbow Gay formation here. Leonorn Mask doesn't need Inlet Pulse. Leonorn Vivace, Versace, whatever, does not need Inlet Pulse. Then all of them combined into a big fusing giant robot, they don't need Inlet Pulse. I don't see how it works out in these decks. You really want something that actually swings, especially in the mass version that doesn't stand the back row, so your front row actually has to hit decent numbers, and Inlet Pulse does nothing here, even if you can actually get 5 attacks. Vivance here stands the whole board and boosts with it. I guess you can technically play Inlet Pulse, but no, fuck that. You don't need that. And then this version is just these two combined, so it's the same thing. Then we got ourselves Claudine. Claudine pretty much cannot play Inlet Pulse because she focuses on one playing tokens, but most importantly, restanding those tokens. So technically she gets 4 attacks, but you really want to focus on your tokens specifically, and I don't see what Inlet Pulse would really add to this deck other than like, oh, drawing a card is good. I don't think that's going to work out. Then we got ourselves Rora, who actually has his own, technically, in-engine Inlet Pulse that lets him get a token, as well as Soul. This one's a weird one, because of the fact that this is a rush deck. On the one side, Inlet Pulse doesn't make any sense, because of the fact that you just want to finish the game as quickly as possible. Something that just gives you soul and draw does nothing. On the other hand, this deck notoriously suffers from not being able to have enough soul to do stuff. And then now with the new upgraded Rora, where you ride and you have to keep the original aura in soul, and you technically don't get any plus soul from persona riding, it's kind of strange. Even then, I'm gonna say that it doesn't actually need it. Doesn't actually need it. Misty Arc? Yeah, Misty Arc Lolols here does not need Inlet Pulse as well. It's kind of similar vein to Veleno here, where it is kind of xenophobic to an extent. You kind of want very specific cards on the field. Inlet Pulse is not one of those specific cards. I guess it would kind of be plausible, but really no. Especially now with the new promo that's out. I don't think Inlet Pulse has any space or function or requirement at this barbecue. Then we've got ourselves a Magnolia Mask. Magnolia Mask is a weird one because of the fact that it has the markers. So Inlet Pulse can actually do something for once other than just go to soul and draw, because it can actually be a beefy attacker on a marker. I'm still gonna say no. Then finally we have Bugs. No for Bugs. But we're not done yet. We're gonna go over Swirler. Do the same exact exercise. Honestly, I think the only actual decks that need Swirler legitimately, where it actually benefits their game plan to a competitive degree and it makes the deck better, are Barrow and Althor Slaughter, this guy that everyone forgets exists. Because these two actually focus on soul charging, which means Swirler can actually get big. If you're only looking at it from the lens of like, okay, I play Swirler, he gets +5 on place, I get soul, and he's 13k, that's great. There are so many other cards that I'm pretty sure fit whatever requirement it is that you need. It's just the thought of like, oh, big number, bigger-ish number is good. Whereas like here it actually matters. Chaos is hard to say, because he also kind of focuses on soul charging. But at the same time, you play one Swirler. And that's because this is a Highlander deck. So we're going to leave it as a valid inclusion. To Chimera guy, I don't think really needs Swirler, honestly. Because you are more in that sort of like Pale Moony Dark States section where it's not about the number of cards in your soul, it's about the quality of your soul. So we're going to put that here, because it doesn't need to soul charge blindly, it just needs a specific thing in soul, and they just constantly keep cycling that out. That goes the same thing for Lukier. Lukier doesn't give a shit about Swirler. He doesn't do anything in the deck because she does not soul charge and doesn't need the soul charging. Okay, I can technically see soul charges from the right line, but whatever, that's different. Likewise, Farvneal does not need that. He has his own ways to get stuff into soul, plus Swirler's grade 1. You want higher grade stuff. I don't think Farvneal and Swirler mix pretty well. Greedon wants his Greedon Mask specifically, because who cares about the old Greedon? Because of the fact that you really want your Desire Devils and all that other jazz, and you don't really want to soul charge your triggers, because you're just, you know, drive check deck, right? So you don't really want to play Swirler. It doesn't really benefit the deck, especially since I'm pretty sure you're never going to be boosting in that deck for the majority of the time, so that doesn't work out. Then we got ourselves Dragjewel Mask here. Used to actually play it, not Dragjewel Mask. In Dragjewel Mask, yeah, you could play it, but now we have Dragjewel Ignis. Doesn't need Swirler whatsoever, because it has its own cards that do way better than Swirler, get way better numbers, way more consistent. Less about just blindly soul charging, more about recursion from drop, which is always the better way to go for any Dark States deck. Omnigujo does not care about specifics in soul, just needs a specific soul to like Soul Blast maybe, but not really, right? Just a Soul Blast for the Midget Wing. Does not really need high numbers in soul. A booster, I fucking guess, but not really. Vehemence Bruce hates anyone that's not Diabolos. He's not going to get along with Swirler. Chronojet here specifically has a restriction. We literally cannot play Brainwash Swirler in his deck because it's either Brainwash Swirler or GG, and you're never going to not play GG. And it's been shown that deck just does not need Swirler. Who would have thought? I guess we can put this here to valid inclusion, because this deck can technically soul charge multiple times and so on and so forth. So fine, I'll give you Chrono Jets a pass here. Unica Mask or Astroya, whatever, does not need Swirler whatsoever. Does not need to so much blindly soul charge. It doesn't care about the cards in soul per se. It just needs 3 cards in soul, someone constantly, specifically being triggers, so you can soul blast them out, get the power, but you have so many ways in engine to just get them from your drop back into your soul that you do not need a Swirler. Endel kind of hates anyone that's not a Direful Doll, so he doesn't need Swirler. He doesn't need to blindly soul charge. He doesn't need the power. He doesn't need any of that jazz. Does not need Swirler. Both of these focuses on grade 3s. technically maybe Swirler would be fine, I guess. And then Grade 4 Bruce. No. So that's just 2 decks that legitimately need this, but it's fine because Swirler's only $7. Then there's Yuika. This one's a little bit more tricky. I've sort of tested the waters with this one on Twitter to see what people think about it, and this one's a lot more divisive because of the fact that Yuika is a lot more generically helpful, right? Like Soul Charge, you get +5, that's fine. If you get a 4 for attack, draw a card, go to Soul, that's great, not always applicable. Bounce something to hand, that's kind of good. So this one's a bit tricky, but we'll try and go through this, and I don't know every lyrical girl as well. One of the other big issues is there's like 50 of these, just 50 of them. Notice how much more we have of these than the other ones. So naturally that makes it a lot more difficult for it to be spread out. Plus, I'm pretty sure Yuika is the only one that has any sort of applications outside of Standard, which is something that I've been focusing on for this video, right? Specifically in the scope of Standard, if that wasn't apparent by the decks only being in Standard. So, Yuika can probably be played in Bermuda. I can see that being very highly likely that she's played in many other Bermuda decks over in Premium. So it has that sort of crossover, whereas Inlet and Brainwash Roller, I'm about like very confidently 10% sure that they're not being played in Premium to any capacity. So let's just go over these ladies here. We'll start from the bottom here with Prisons, a deck that I've been playing a lot. A lot of people try to think that you need Yuika in Prisons and that Prisons really need Yuika, and it works out. It does not. Don't play Prisons with Yuika. I don't care if you think it'll work out, just don't do it. You don't need it. It's not worth it. It's just don't. Just fucking don't. Pacifica, I'll be honest, don't know Pacific that well. I've been interested in building it a little bit. It's like the second deck. It's like the very first deck, I think. The first deck that I built in Vanguard 0. So I'm interested to try this out again. I'm pretty sure it does not need Yuika. Supposedly, according to Twitter people, Sienna needs Yuika, but I'll give you that one. I still hardly disagree about it needing Yuika, but just to the fact that Sienna right now needs to clear up front row, so you want to bounce back your cards that clear up the front row so you can play them against next turn, so it actually functions, you know, together with your game plan actively, I guess. Michu doesn't have the soul for it. Lifia doesn't want Yuika, I don't think. You want like grade 3s and all that other jazz. I'm gonna put Lutetia here because Lutetia and Yuika work really well together, specifically with the fact that you can like soul charge stuff and then call it out from soul, bounce it out to hand. You can bounce back your bread girl. You can do a lot of things, so it actually does work with the deck really well from that perspective. Originally, I thought Kyrie was up here because it's a deck that's all about bouncing and playing stuff, but specifically after Divines, you don't need this at all in Kyrie. It's kind of the same thing with Hazard because you had this interaction where you could like put stuff from the bottom of your deck, draw a card, but then instead bounce it to your hand and still draw the card, so it was kind of nice, but the deck uses up a lot of soul. I don't think you need that anymore. Medell couldn't fucking even be able to use Yuika if you wanted to. Really doesn't want to because you want most of your stuff in drop anyways, and you need your soul because your soul lasts 4 in most turns to get going. Kyoka, about the same thing, can't use soul. Petrolka can technically use Yuika, but she plays like 1 Yuika, so is that really the same? Is that really useful? But fine, I put Chaos in this tier, so we'll keep her there as well. She's, you know, very xenophobic. She doesn't care about anyone that's not a, whatever her thing is, Ernest correct. So I don't think Yuika does anything for this deck other than maybe protect it, bounce it to hand, don't care. You need like a whole board of Ernest correct, so you're not playing that. Alistel, I've heard some arguments for this. I don't think they were very, I was not convinced, but I'll throw your old bone. Fine, we can put this here in valid inclusion because of the fact that you can call out like Persona Rides and stuff like that and bounce it to the hand. Even though most decks can do that to an extent technically because it's the same library, but whatever. We'll put that there. Fine. Lorinol is a weird one because Lorinol actually has the soul to use Yuika. And she would not mind Yuika, especially because she gets the power. She can restand units, so you can stand the Yuika with the plus 5k if you play something that turn. Plus, she can bounce stuff like the Song Girl that can actually be useful, very useful for the deck. So, oh, fine, I'll say valid inclusion. Ballista is a deck that notoriously used Yuika back when the deck was like top tier. The deck got shot in the legs multiple times, just one time, but multiple times that one time. And it hasn't showed up at all. Did it really do anything for the deck? Was it like super functional? Was it critical to the game? No, I'm gonna say no. It was just a good card in a good deck. Felty Rosa. Maybe you can bounce your ghosts, clear your front row? No. Felty Rosa does not use Yuika. Herminia. Literally cannot use Yuika. You're supposed to have no soul in this deck. Oh, but you can use it to soul less. No. Don't even try. Then we got ourselves a tortilla or whatever the hell. No. Want all friend stuff. Technically, you can play it to keep yourself safe, but it's in the same category as Earnest Correct. So I'm gonna say no on that. Fennel, no. Technically, maybe, like most of these, there is some sort of interaction that you can do with it, but I'm still gonna say no. And then we got Shortmot. No, cannot use it because of the fact that you are not so much high on soul, but you want specific names and specific cards to play out. Yuika doesn't really do a lot for you because of the fact that especially you're going to be putting probably your attackers back into soul anyways. And that's it. That is the list of staples that need to be required to play, or the decks that need to automatically play these staples. We got 1 for Lyrical, 2 for Sorta, 2 for Dark States. Maybe some people can argue, move some stuff up, but I can guarantee you that even if through all the comments and everything, we won't get past 5 of these out of maybe the whole 15, and the vast majority of them probably aren't seeing that much use. Conclusion: these cards shouldn't be that expensive. Staples should be cheap. Let people play what they want. Take care of yourselves and each other. Play Vanguard and have yourselves a damn good one.